Welcome to Hidden Hands. You got your guy Cruz here. I got my man Trav.
Yo, what's good, man? Welcome back to Hidden Hands. I'm gonna jump out there, Cruz. I'm gonna dive out there on this one, because this interview means so much to me. You know what I mean? Because it's very special to me. It's very dear to me because it's actually the guest we have today has actually been a hidden hand to my career, and he's been a hidden hand to so many careers, and he's also had tons of hidden hands help his career. So we're gonna get so much knowledge out, so much information, so much. This is legendary. You know what I mean? We got a songwriter. He's not just a songwriter. He's a publisher. He's a producer. He's a mogul. He's taken the music industry and basically done what everybody's trying to do with it. He's done it from all facets to creating and also business. He's the one who told me that the word business is longer than the word music. So you need to learn the word business.
There we go.
With no further ado, we have the one and only Laney Stewart in the building today.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. Kind
Clap it up
words.
for that.
Yes, sir.
Very
Clap
kind
it up for
words.
that,
Appreciate you.
Yeah, how you doing today, Laney?
Man, I am great and blessed.
Okay.
Yes, definitely.
That's a good way to be.
Yes.
That's a good way to be.
You remember this guy?
Man, do I? I use his story sometimes as what I tell people because of how quickly things can shift.
Right.
Because he was, when I was working and consulting with him and just kind of, he was, at that point where a lot of people are in the business where they trying to, get on. And then his opportunity came and then it started talking about money. And then I had to go, okay, this is what you should go get. Because, he was, glad to be there, but I'm like, you shorten yourself. Ask for more money.
Right. That's love.
Let's get you some more money. So, and then from there, he was gone and he was doing his thing. So,
there it is,
it was a lot of coaching. I like to call it coaching because people come with their gifts,
Absolutely.
what they bring to the table. So a lot of times some people are uncoachable. And you can't, they know everything, and so, or they think they want the experience. So, coaching them up and the guys that really take to it, it's a meeting of the minds, basically. So they have to kind of, want to be coached.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I may not have listened to everything, but I tried to listen. You know what I mean? I listened to most of it. You know what I mean? Yeah.
You did all right.
Some don't listen to nothing.
They don't listen at all. Yep.
I see you on the charts.
He's a hustler.
That's what
man.
I always. Well, that's my last one. That's my parting word. See you on the charts.
He's a hustler, man. Definitely a hustler.
So before we get to the charts, before we get to the hits, let's just start at the beginning. We don't have to go too into detail,
Okay.
because we want to get to the meat. We want to get to the good stuff. So we just want to. How did you? Because you come from a musical family. You're a legendary producer. Like when you look you up online, your credits start in the 80s.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You were getting credits and stuff. So how did you get in? How did you become a producer? Like how did you?
The quick story of it, if you can tell it, I started really early. I think my first production I did was 14. I was 14 years old. We did a movie when it was right when hip hop was coming out and everybody was doing New York hip hop, So it was movies being made during that time, and soundtracks were a big thing. So with the legendary Phil Ramone and my uncle, who was also a producer at the time, but he did more of the jingle thing, got a call to do this movie. I forget the name of the movie, but it's one of the 5 hip hop movies from that time, and we did a couple songs. And from there, Chicago got into the house music scene with Steve Hurley and Farley Keith, and right when it was, in the beginning, before it became, house. I hear people go, "Oh, house started in Detroit." It didn't start in Detroit. It started in Chicago with the battle of BMX and GCI, and so we were all there trying, guys trying to make it. Eventually, because my family was pretty much in the jingle scene in a lot of different ways, I ended up being a jingle producer. I started really kind of doing that. When you're 18 and 19 years old and you're producing, I was producing major campaigns for McDonald's, Coca-Cola, United Airlines, 5 days a week. It was the different campaign nationals all. And so they, that was going on. But the reason I was getting hired was because I did the jingles that sounded like records. I didn't do the do, you know. But I was doing stuff that I was like, people were going like, "Yo, can you give me a long version of that?"
Right.
So, the agencies would be like really gassed up over these long versions of their spots. And so I was writing with this one, a script writer and a agency exec, Michelle McKinney at Burrell Advertising, and she unanimously, or I guess, or anonymously sent it to a publisher. This guy named Michael Lachey, and he called me one day and was like, screaming on the phone, "I want to sign you," and I didn't know what publishing was.
Oh wow!
Had no clue what it was.
A lot of us don't in the beginning.
Yeah, from the beginning, you don't know what publishing is. But what I did like is that they were owned by Paramount. The company was owned by Paramount.
Gotcha.
So me and my partner at the time started thinking, well, maybe we can turn this over, our jingle company, into some like theme song music, TV stuff. So we wasn't thinking about, but I was practicing making records. After we get off the jingle thing, me and my brother Mark would go to the studio and I would write all night. We'd be done by 6. I'm making a ton of money as a real kid. My brother said, "You look like a dope dealer back in the day," because he was making so much money. And so, we do that, cut these records at night, get up and cut these jingles during the day. This guy calls about these songs that we've been writing. And I'm kind of like, yeah. Well, we'll come out to LA for a meeting. We got $10,000 was my first advance. I think we, went out and just did something stupid
Blew
with
that.
it.
Yeah, we don't even remember that $10,000.
Yeah, we don't even. When they came in, we was like, let's go to dinner, know. And the next thing I know, I went out to do a spot. And it was for actually BBD and New Edition for this Coca-Cola campaign, I believe it was. And I got a call from Benny Medina, who had heard some of my stuff. And at that time, my publisher had me meeting people, Lil Silas, Benny Medina, Sylvia Rohn, who were all like the black executives at that time. And he called me and he said, "Can you come over for a meeting?" And I said, "Yeah." And but I missed it because the guys were late. New Edition was late. All of them was late, so it ran my session over. So I'm like, "Man, I'm sorry, I ain't gonna be able to make it." And I thought, that was the end of that.
Right.
So he says, "Can you come tomorrow?" And I went, "Well, yeah, I'll be there tomorrow." So we get up to go the next day. I sit there and he goes, "I need you to go to Minneapolis and work with Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis." And then I'm going like, then I'll go, wait a minute,
This is getting
like, are you
serious.
serious?
Yeah, because this is at the time when they're like
On fire.
Fire. Janet, everything they're touching is they're hot.
Right.
So I'm thinking he's, that's in 2 months. Oh yeah, I go. He's like, "Can you be there next week?" And I'm like, it's all like an avalanche, coming at me. Now these are my idols.
Right.
Yeah.
These guys are, I've been looking at the back of in those days, the back of the cover of the album. This is who this guy is. I've seen these names. I've seen these studios. I know these, I've been studying, but the only thing you could do is those days, there was no internet, was read the back of the, the cover or the inside of the CD jacket. And so I went to Minneapolis, long story short, pull up there in a taxi. My stomach is just.
Right.
That's what I was going to ask. Were you nervous at the time? Did you have any thing to overcome, or did you just know
have you ever been so nervous that you black out?
Yeah, you just
like,
go blank.
you're just walking through the moment.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what
you're on
happened.
autopilot.
I'm on autopilot. My legs is doing the thing.
Yeah.
Everything is doing the thing.
Yeah.
But the thing ain't. I'm like, I'm seeing white
Palms
spots.
is
You're
like, I hope I could remember what I was doing in the room.
So they open the door and I'm thinking it's gonna be this big staff. All these people they open the door and they buzz you in. There's nobody there. So I'm like, what's going on? But I see this big mural of Janet on the wall and the Grammys standing there. And then Terry comes out. And I'm like,
Yeah.
And he's not, if you meet Terry for the first time, he's not the most warm guy. So he's like, "Come on in."
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, man. So I get that they're now going in their head, who is this kid?
Right.
And so I go in there and I walk to the back. And I'm looking for Jimmy, but I don't see Jimmy anywhere. And Steve Hodge, who's the legendary mix engineer for all of their stuff, is there. And there's nobody. It's just us. We getting ready to write a song. So we go, we sit down. At that time, we were working on the legendary Karen White's album, Romantic. And they go, well, I go, well, I need some gear, and they're like, well, if you can write, go on back in the rehearsal room, and they flight time, wait, go on back in the rehearsal room and write a song. So I go back, the time is back there rehearsing. This is where the time is rehearsing.
Oh man.
So there's a piano, and I swear it seemed like it was like just a light that was going, over my head.
Yeah.
They just had one little fluorescent light. They didn't turn on lights on.
Yeah.
And this piano, and they asked me, gave me a drum machine and a guitar amp, and they said, write it. And all of my practice of all the years of things just went back to my bedroom and wrote a record, and it went from there. But the thing that happened that was the craziest was Silas was there to check on a record that they were doing for Ralph Tresvant, which was Sensitivity. Actually, the record was Sensitivity.
Okay.
So he was there checking on that record, and he said, "I met you someplace before," and I said, "Yeah, we met at the Urban Network." It was my publisher that threw me in front of him. Lou's the hottest A&R guy because he's got, everything. New Edition, BBD, all these things. And so he goes, "Oh, okay, what you doing up here?" And I was like, "Well, I'm working with Jimmy and Terry." Changed everything because now he's like, "You're on everything I'm doing now."
Right.
So I go back with the hottest A&R guy, and then everything just took off. Like Sylvia started calling me. Obviously I was in with Benny, but at that time the producer network was a very small community. So when they start hearing about you, it spread.
It's you're gonna get a call.
Wildfire.
Right. So there was a thing of there's this kid out of Chicago that's doing everything, and everybody starts calling. So at that point, I think the first year that I was in the business, I placed like 58 records.
Sheesh.
And we were just, my staff at the time, who was Judy and my brother Mark, these guys were in high school, and they were coming in doing administration, and we were creating what we now know as an infrastructure for our business.
Wow.
So, we were very organized, but we were learning really hard lessons along the way. I didn't get no back end on that project. It's like it's all kind of things through the mistakes of being in the business, and so many of them were just happening because when you have 58 records, one of the problems is you got to get paid. And so we're focusing on the money, but we're also not necessarily focusing in on the contracts, and we're focusing in on them. But, you're just going from one project to the next, And it was funny because the other night I didn't realize they did a remake, and this is dating myself a little bit, but they did a remake of White Men Can't Jump.
Yep.
And I had a song in the original movie.
Yep.
And I remember we got the call to do that movie, and as I remember asking my brother, I called him the other day. I said, "Yo, did we ever get a sync for that movie?" Like, I didn't even know if we got a sync because we had a song on the soundtrack and in the movie.
Right.
So there was just a lot of things that we just didn't know.
Right.
We didn't know about
It was
the
just
game.
moving too fast.
It was moving so fast that we were, and so my brother, who is now, manages me and Trick, and at one point managed Dream and a whole bunch of other people. He learned because we would be on our phones with our lawyers. He would be the one having the conversations. So he was learning that, and we're cutting records, and it was all just in the 90s, in the early 90s, we were just, learning.
Right.
There was we had some mentors, but it was still like a learning curve of understanding the math, how the math works, how certain words like reduction and being bound by the cap, what it really meant. Perpetuity.
A big word.
Throughout
know
the
that.
universe that comes with that.
You gotta know perpetuity.
You gotta remember it comes with perpetuity throughout the universe.
That's a hell of a word.
So that was kind of the, in the meantime, how kind of it got into publishing was my brother Tricky, and I had some other writers, some mainly guys that were with him. At that time they were 16 and 17. So I kind of had responsibility over these guys, my cousin Sean. And so my publisher was like, "Laney, things are going so great. What can we do for you?" And I was like, "Well, I want to do," and as far as I know at that time, it was one of the first JVs. I basically asked to do a JV so I could just get some money to pay my guys and get them, because they're writing songs, but they're not there yet. Tricking them wasn't there yet. But I wanted to, get them so that they could be paid to write. Because really at that time, your publishing advance allowed you to be able to write without suffering.
Right.
You know, the constant. So,
Absolutely.
you know, even just a little money, if you got $50,000 or $60,000, you know, as a kid, that's a lot of money to be at that time to be able to say, well, I can write for a living without having to go get a job. That's a huge advantage.
Absolutely.
In the game. So I signed Tricky. I signed me and my brother Mark signed all, you know, my cousin Sean, signed my ex-wife. I signed a bunch of, you know, 6 or 7 people, all of who've gone on to have hit records. So what I did was what I learned from Jimmy and Terry, started teaching it to those guys. And I realized that there was a kind of a business in teaching that the science of hit songwriting. It's paid off for long-term dividends because of just that one moment of doing that allowed me to kind of get into buying and selling publishing, asset-based business where we're not just giving away our rights, but we're buying rights and selling them. So that was, you know, people think a lot of times in the business that it's all about the, you know, you got to be in front of the thing. But behind the scenes, a lot of things that I was doing that kind of created where my career was that I was buying and selling and finding talent and signing them and developing them and going, okay, now they're off to the world. And that ended up being kind of my thing along with me writing hits still. So, and it's still what I do. So that's the short version, I guess.
Listen, we're here to listen today.
Yeah,
I'm gonna be honest.
yeah.
I told Trav in the car, I said we're gonna ask a lot of open-ended.
Right.
Because
be careful what you ask.
Because
It's long answers.
Because it's so much, you know what I mean. But it's good. It's good.
Absolutely.
A lot of people don't, especially where we're at in the music industry now. It's a lot of fudder and a lot of cloudy information. You know what I mean. So it's good to have somebody who has been around that long and seen the game change so much. So what brung you from Chicago to Atlanta?
Well, that was kind of the opposite. So what happened was we're going all over. We're traveling. I hadn't been home in a year. And we built a studio. As a matter of fact, it's kind of apropos to the fact that we're here in Sessions. Our first studio we built in Evanston, Illinois. And it was getting so bad that I was never home. I was never seeing my family. You know, we started with, hotel. We would have 3 or 4 hotel rooms and bills coming in at $14,000 a month. And as a business, it was just not sustainable for us to be out in LA as long as we were. So I moved to LA. And so we closed the studio there. We started to build a studio in Los Angeles. We did that. And so in the meantime, while I was working with Trick and those guys, you know, they were exposed to the guys that were coming in to work for me. So at one point, this is right when LaFace was just opening up. Kenny and LA were kind of, the rumor was they were splitting as producers, but they really hadn't gotten, you know, the LaFace deal, which is historically what we know now. And there was a person who was introducing Trick to LA. Now I knew LA and Kenny through, we were production, you know. Now these guys are going to the next level as label owners. So LA's focus was down here, obviously in Atlanta. So Trick came down and my brother put together a deal for them to come down and do which essentially was a production deal that ultimately didn't produce a lot in terms of record, but what it did do was allow us to build the third studio, which is next door, which everybody knows historically now as what Triangle Sound is.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's where the seed money came from, building Triangle Sound.
Gotcha.
Trick came down. But in that kind of split with LA and Kenny, I ended up working with Babyface, and me and him ended up writing together and producing while Trick was down here working with LA. So I was covering West Coast. He was covering, him and Sean were covering the down here in Atlanta. Eventually, when LaFace sold, that was the first time I kind of was like, okay, my brother's like, we need to everybody be here. So we all folded down, and that's how I got to Atlanta.
Got you. So the opportunity was wide open out here.
Yeah, because in those days, you got to remember, there was Jermaine, Dallas, and I don't want to forget any other producers.
So many of them.
There was so many at that time, but this is where the heat was coming from. Like it had shifted from LA, you know, from being the LA producers to something. We knew something was going on down here. And I remember my brother calling me, he's like, "You need to come down here," because at that time when I came, it was Shakespeare. We had Focus in the building, Trick, and myself. And he's like, "I think with the 4 of y'all in the building together, we could shut this shit down." So I was like, I'm working with Kenny at the time, and we're doing, Madonna.
Right.
Like me and Kenny is doing everything. So
yeah,
I'm like, yeah.
That's Babyface for you guys. He's saying Kenny like it's Babyface.
That's the relationship.
Yeah, so we're working and, making records and stuff. And so my brother's like, come down. So I just, dropped what we were doing. And Kenny was like, going down there. He was, I think I learned a great lesson from him. You don't keep nobody when they don't want to be there. He let me out of my deal. I came down here, and then Shake wrote No Scrubs. Trick had at that time Who Dat, which went number one rap record. We got the number one rap song of the year with that. The rap wasn't even in our business, so it was like that was some sugar.
And JT's Money is a legend in Florida.
JT Money, so
legend.
And so when we came down, I don't know if we actually all knew what was happening at that time, simply because I was meeting Focus for the first time. So when you meet somebody, everybody sizing each other up. I knew Shake, me and Trick, obviously brothers. So we have this kind of triangle with 4 rooms back there, and we just started competing with each other. Like it wasn't even like we didn't care what anybody else was doing outside. And so you go in there and hear a song, or you hear a record, you be like, "I'll be right back." You go and you go in your room because you're like, "I got to beat that." Everybody, this level of healthy competition was really going down. So out of that came Case of the X. I remember hearing Trick going in there. I remember he opened, you would open when you had one, you open your door. You prop it open. Bam, 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 bam. And I'm like, you hearing it in the hallway. We all standing in the hallway. Shake is over there doing bills. And so you hear that, Focus is coming in with these crazy beats. And because my style was a different thing, where they were, I was still kind of doing my Babyface thing and doing, records. And so, but we all got number ones out of that time. It was like I had Without You with Charlie Wilson that kind of brought his career back. Shake was handling the Beyonce, the early days, with him and Candy doing that. Trick was doing his thing. We had the Blue Cantrell stuff at that time. We just got a lot of hits out of that moment. And then I found Dream. And Dream kind of walked in and one day came in and sat down, and my boy Vaughn brought him to me, and I was like, I don't know if you're ready.
If you want the knowledge, I'm going to give it to you. I may not just hand it over.
Right.
But
But even this, it's like I sometimes the people are sitting in a room and I'm giving them, and I when they leave, I go, I just gave you $1 million worth of information, whether you know it or not. How you take that, it's really about how you feel about the game. Because in the early days, I found myself in rooms with like Nile Rodgers, and Nile probably to this day doesn't even know that I was in the room with him. But when he was hot and I was 16, I would find myself in the room and I was just soaking up game. Everywhere I went, I would be a fly on the wall and just be glad to be in the room with some people who was doing it, whether from a creative standpoint to a business standpoint, which is why even to this day, it gives you advantages. Because even I know we're going to get into this conversation probably about the AI thing a little bit, but even what I'm learning about that is just because I got a thirst for knowledge about it. And so I'm on top of what's going on. We talk about it a lot at the studio. So the changes in the business is really about understanding how to just sometimes be quiet. As much as I can give game out is listen to what's going on, because the game has changed, but it really hasn't.
Right.
There's a lot of things that are still the same, that are exactly the way that they were. We're still talking about points. We're still talking about percentages of things and what the value of those things are, but how they apply to the new content. That's the real adjustment. So
absolutely. So this is a segment of the show we called Get the Lawyer on the Phone.
Yeah.
And it's a good friend of yours,
Yes.
Jason Berger.
Jason.
So I'm gonna give him a call now. We got a question to ask him.
Yeah.
Get him on the phone.
Yes, sir. Let's do it.
Is he gonna charge us?
Let's see.
You
I'm
never,
gonna
you
ask.
never know. It might come into your email 30 days from now.
It'll come to my account. JB,
What's happening?
we got a familiar voice here with you. Today we have a legend. I'm gonna let you guess.
You did my Chris Brown deal.
Ooh.
Oh, too easy. Come
Ooh.
Too easy.
on. Yo, how you get legends in the building like this?
I don't
Hey,
know,
man.
man.
Hey.
I don't know
Come
how
on, guys.
like,
God is
we
good,
just-
man.
Yeah,
Yep.
two hustlers on a podcast get a legend like Laney fucking Stewart in the goddamn building.
I know, right? We had to get them.
Yes, sir.
We had to get the gems, man. We can't say we're giving the gems to the people and not get Laney Stewart. You know what I mean? Somebody who has so much to
Man.
offer. We got
What's
to get him.
happening, Jason?
What's good, brother? How are you, sir?
I'm good. Down here in Atlanta on the first real hot day, so we burning up.
Yeah, it's hot.
Oh man, same up here. I woke up in Manhattan, back in Philly now, but that commute was not fun with 95-degree weather.
Oh,
Man,
yeah.
it's
You
summer.
got to get down here, Jason.
Here we are.
You got to come down.
I know.
Man, you gotta check
I
the
know.
spot, man.
That's what
It's
the
beautiful.
guy's been telling me.
Yeah, it's
Yes,
amazing.
yes, sir.
Amazing. But
I'm on it. Let's get it on the books.
so JB, the question today, we really want to pose a scenario on you, and I know it's gonna trigger you. I'm curious of your feedback on it because it's based around this new AI madness. And
Oh boy.
yeah, so
Oh boy.
So this is something that we dug up on Producer Grind, and it's a kid that had left a tweet, and he's like, I just used Chat GPT to look at one of my producer agreements, and it told me, and I told it to explain it to me as if I were a middle schooler, and he's like, that shit is a cheat code. It explained everything clear, no lawyer. I sent it to section by section, and he said it's the new wave, right? And I'm curious because I know you're gonna have some things to say to uncover some of this. So go ahead, man.
But it's still, I think number one, let's take a step back before I answer the direct question.
Mm-hmm.
I think the technology, number one, is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's whether it's something that I've seen recently in the film space
Mm-hmm.
versus what we see, pretty regularly now in the music space.
Mm-hmm.
I think to be able to employ AI technology we're just scratching the surface. So I think the technology itself is amazing, but it's also very dangerous
Yes.
until there's some rules put to how it's used, right? And I think in our space primarily, it's been used to rip people's voices off without having to pay them, without having whatever. And there's still problems with that. I don't think that can run rampant. I think that'll ultimately get regulated. But the stuff that really bothers me, and I know most of the people in the room have children as well, where it's like, how about, I saw something the other day online, it said, how about the real dangers with this? We're talking about ripping Drake's voice off and whatever the guy's making in the few hours that track may remain up. But what happens if you could recreate our voices and
Right.
call our children to come down and open the door?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I think that painting that picture, especially with you guys that have kids, it's like, man, we really have to respect what this technology brings and make sure that it's brought into our industry in a very productive and regulated way.
Yes. I
That's
agree.
kind of my stance on it generally.
Right.
I think in terms of the example you gave, if the person who's getting that feedback and told that in a very rudimentary way understands all the concepts and has a full understanding of, for example, the difference between getting paid mechanical royalty at 75% of the rate or 100% of the rate,
Right.
or understand what the imposition of caps could mean.
Mm-hmm.
You could be told it in preschool language and it still may not give you the insight to be able to negotiate that agreement to the best of your ability or the best of your advantage.
Right.
You know what I mean? So
Right.
I feel like it may be half of the battle. It's like, I mean, listen, the best example of dumbing things down that I could give that's so productive is Donald Passman's book.
Right. Exactly.
Edition after edition,
Exactly.
he covers all the big concepts that I deal with as a lawyer
Right.
on a different level, not even a different level, but maybe using different vernacular.
Right.
And he takes that and boils it down to a language that you can understand, that's coherent, and you can ultimately put in practice.
Yep.
So this technology isn't creating a new concept. It may be done in a different way, and it may not be done by humans like Donald Passman, but we've had resources in our industry for years that would help you better understand a specific agreement, a specific concept that's relevant in those agreements, and ultimately help you make your decision about whether you want to seek advice or you want help when you're negotiating those on your own, or do you want to rely on someone whose main role is to understand those concepts, to understand those agreements, and to make sure that you're protected. Something I said to a client earlier today is, when I think at least, when you're doing things at a really high level, which we all are been doing, right? If I'm building a team of people around me to help with, you know, in the broadest respect, my career, in the most narrow respect, maybe a deal or even a record or even, you know, a chorus or something. I want experts at each spoke of the wheel.
Yeah.
I don't want a generalist.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't want someone, you know, and frankly, to be honest, that's why, as much as I've branded myself over my career as an entertainment lawyer, to kind of bring in and learn those concepts that are involved in TV and film and literary rights, and what I'm really good at is the music stuff.
Yeah.
So why do I want to dabble?
Right.
Why don't I just continue to hone in and get really good and become an expert at music law? And then I'm welcomed onto those teams as one of those spokes and one of those experts. But if you have experts at each spoke of the wheel, that wheel's going to turn consistently year after year, month after month. And I'm firsthand witness to that concept being tied to success and the speed of the success. I'll be honest with you. So I still don't think to you know, in a long-winded way to answer your question, I don't think that technology is going to replace, it may replace some lawyers. It's not going to replace the good ones. And I think, you know, the folks that have utilized lawyers really rely on them in part to take a piece of the workload off their plate.
Yeah.
It's not because they don't get it. I mean, you guys get royalties and PPD and advances and recoupability and all the concepts that are within these agreements that, you know, I've helped you guys with over the years.
Right.
But at the end of the day, you guys are in the studio. You guys have clients. You guys are doing things. So I think, you know, having understanding and having help with those agreements because of the lack of understanding or knowledge is part of it. But we also play a big role for our clients as lawyers to take a lot of the administrative work off of their plate. And that's, I think, also in large part why you know, a lot of the clients, anybody hits them on business, bro, I stay in the studio. You have to talk to my people, talk to manager, talk to Jason, talk to the lawyer.
Absolutely.
And I think that works well because they, you know, are able to stay creative, and then we're able to take what we're good at off of their plate and operate as a really efficient team.
Jason, can I ask you a question real quick? This is Laney.
Sure.
How do you feel about where the music education of your clients are as it pertains to, I mean, obviously you and I have a conversation, it's going to be at a certain level, but you got a guy, I've, you know, been in situations where I've seen new producers and songwriters won't even do not in my case, but won't do a split sheet, which is probably one of the most simplest things that you can do about the splits on a song, and go, hey, talk to my lawyer. There a lack of understanding, or is it getting an education about those things, whether it's from AI or even just their lawyer? Is there a base level knowledge that these kids are missing at this point?
I think here's my play on that. I think having a basic level is super important, even if you're punning those tasks to different professionals on your team. Right? Because at some point, I'm still going to have to come to you and say, hey, I'm stuck on this with the other side.
Right.
They're not willing to give us this. I think we should get this. What do you want to do? And that's a business decision that really belongs to the client. I'll try to give them as much input as I can to help them make that decision. So at the end of the day, even if you're employing people in whatever they do, experts, like I mentioned, you still have to have some level of understanding of what the business is,
Right.
so that you can intelligently
Make
engage with
decisions.
those experts.
Yeah.
Yeah, and make those decisions. Now, the thing that I see that's promising is the younger generation, producers in particular, have taken an interest in learning that stuff at an earlier point than maybe when I started doing this 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago. And there was just folks that said, you know what, I got a lawyer, I'm paying a lawyer good money. That's their shit. Let them handle it.
Right.
And I don't need to learn it because I'm paying for the good lawyer. Even with the kids that are successful early on now, I still see them investing to a certain extent in some level of education of the business so that they could be better just throughout their career.
Yeah.
And have those meaningful interactions. So I'm hopeful that trend will continue. You know, I know all of us on this call invest in that. We all give back in some respect to teaching the younger generation, whether that's high school kids that are interested in engineering or producing, or college kids, you know, over in the universities that I lecture at. But like, to me, that's a responsibility that I take on as someone who's done okay and, you know, has people's ear. I always will try to invest in people's education in the business. And here's another piece where that touches managers, right?
Yeah,
because you get all walks of life. You get managers that have 20, 25 years experience in the business, and you get guys that just came up on the block with the artist that made it, and by the way, in a lot of those, a lot of those instances, homie ain't going nowhere,
Right.
because of the relationship.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So like,
you got to deal with it.
the label execs, the lawyers getting the artist here, yo, what's he doing? A lot of times, the only path to success is to train them the right way.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
listen, I'm happy to do that with the right folks. The managers that come in that don't know shit and you can't tell them shit, I'm cool, bro. I'm even cool on the artist. I don't care what the checks look like. But at the end of the day, the managers that understand that they're a bit naive, understand their role and their relationship to the artist and how important that is, and most importantly, receptive to learning. I love those relationships, because not only are you doing your job and you're making money, but you're also educating people to empower them to feed their kids and maybe their kids' kids one day.
Yeah, because
so
you gotta get all the juice that you can. We're talking about small margins, and if you don't know where those margins are and how to get every penny, you could be losing a significant amount of money on a successful record.
Totally. And listen, it's even more work than I sign up for.
Right.
Because I could do the deal. I could get the deal to closing, and what may be a 3-minute conversation with Cruz is a 30-minute conversation with the manager from the block.
Right.
And I'm okay with that. You know what I mean? Because if they're willing to learn and they're going to help us win together, I'll invest in that. And that's non-billable. That's not shit that's on the timesheet or invoices. That's just my investment into my clients.
Your day easier too.
It does. And I love to see the guys that take those combos, and some girls for that matter. And it's the only time you have to have it. Right. That's when I know I got a real special person, because every lesson, every tutorial, every deal review, they take it, they absorb it, and you don't got to tell them twice. They're going to run with it from there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's very, very encouraging to me for what my role is anyway.
And none of this can come from a computer. Bottom line.
Yeah.
To be determined.
Being cheap. Let's just keep it real. Being cheap is expensive.
Definitely.
You know what I mean?
And I don't.
Oh yeah. Listen, we're putting aside what it costs to have those people around you.
Yeah.
Having those people around you is the only way to ensure that you're getting paid 100% for the hard ass work that you guys put in day in and day out.
Absolutely.
And that's just what it is.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate that we're in an industry that for the most part is fairly unregulated. There's big businesses that kind of do what they want. Now, we've got great lawyers over the years, built mechanisms into these contracts to try to keep people honest. But I know big producers that audit as a matter of course every year. And every audit, they're making crazy bread because it's just the fact that unless you have your shit together and you know who to ask and what to register and go through the hoops and figure all that out, people are going to go out of their way to fuck you. Excuse my language.
Absolutely.
But like, that's why that's what gets me up every day. Not everybody's cut for it, but I love every day to get up to represent the guy that may not have that and be able to walk them through it to make sure that they're getting treated fairly when there's uneven bargaining power, and to make sure they're being compensated for the work that they put in and is out in the marketplace. I love it.
There it is.
Yep.
Man.
Yep. That's what it is, man.
And wisdom.
And,
Absolutely.
Just to touch on
and all three of us have been in those situations together. You know. Hopefully those semi-annually checks are still coming. But at the end of the day, we've all been through that. We know what it looks like. And I think, you know, that's why you guys are in a great position to talk to people about it who may not have gone through that yet. You know, I think you guys are doing an amazing job with the information that you're putting out on this.
Gotcha.
Thank you, brother.
Thanks. Appreciate it,
Appreciate you, man. That
We
was
appreciate the kind words.
yes.
Of course.
You
And
know?
always good
Of course.
speaking to you, and we appreciate your game and be a part of you guys, you know, chopping it up again after a couple years.
Yeah, I mean,
You know what I mean?
For sure.
It's-
And listen, we're going to set a date before the end of the summer where the four of us going to grab dinner in
Let's go.
Atlanta.
Yeah.
Let's go.
And
Let's
and
do
that's
it.
that's my podcast commitment of the day.
There you go.
Of all y'all
Gotcha.
But
on
dinner's
the
on
email.
Yeah, I was about to say, you
That's
getting that
right.
bread. You
Easy.
getting that bread.
Hey, man.
Easy.
Yeah.
Listen, to sit with three legends like you guys, it's a cheap ticket to write. I'm happy to do it.
Let's go, man.
Appreciate
Hold
it.
down.
Yes, sir.
But we want to get back to the dream.
Yeah,
I want
back
you to
to-
get back to
Okay.
the
Yeah,
dream
that
and
story.
you
Yeah,
discovering
let's
dream.
pick back up.
Yeah,
Definitely want you to
'cause-
get back into that.
So Von brings Dream in, and he really didn't have the greatest audition. Me and him never talk about it, but he knows it existed. But I did tell Dream, I said, man, come back. You know, because there was the one thing that made me interested in him that I saw in Dream was I had been working on the Casey and JoJo album, the Love Always record. And one day when we were there, Bone Thugs and Harmony came by the studio. I love Bone Thugs and Harmony. So that cadence of that's what they started that.
Yeah.
You know, everybody wants to
One of my favorite groups of all time.
all time.
I love them. They're
Love
a
them.
perfect mix of
And they
rap
don't get and the
and melodic. Come on, they have so
Exactly.
many kids in the
Ohio?
rap game right now.
Yes,
Oh,
they
that's
are
it?
the godfathers.
So much DNA right now
Yes.
in the game.
And so having just done the Casey and JoJo record and them just being by, like they was just hanging out.
Yeah.
And then fast forward to Dream walking in, he had a little bit of that. But I could tell that he was nervous or something that was going on, that he just wasn't on his game. And so I told him to come back. So, you know, you tell people that, they never come back.
Absolutely.
He came back.
We touched on this before.
Yeah.
We always come back.
Yeah,
but yeah,
always.
a lot of people don't come back.
The real ones comes back. And if you know Dream, if you know anything about him, is because Dream has this insatiable nature to want to prove you wrong. So I think he wanted to prove me wrong, so he came back. He killed it. The first thing we were working on B2K at the time, and I said, all right, well, let's write this B2K record with me, and we wrote everything, which went on to be a hit for them. That, you know, Pandemonium was a double platinum album. His first record, he was on a double platinum album. Nobody knew who he was. In the meantime, I'm going, okay, I'm going to sign this kid and develop him, work with him. And then I got Lil Jon to give him a record. Lil Jon had sent a whole bunch of tracks over at that time. And Yeah was like crazy at that time. Usher was doing, you know, really good. And so Lil Jon sends me this track, and I send him the Dream, and I go, yo, if you can do anything with any of these. He wrote this record called Okay for Nivea that went number one. Then he wrote.
I remember that song.
Remember that
record.
song?
I was in,
So this is like his second record. And
Crazy.
people don't know that he is this guy.
Yeah.
And so, you know, and shout out to Lil Jon for allowing him as a new guy to write on his record. So at that time, I couldn't get nobody after that to really kind of work with him. I kept going, this kid is a genius. But in the meantime, we're developing, and I'm showing him the science of what I learned from Jimmy and Terry, what I've taught to Trick, what I've taught to different ones. And he's soaking up the game. And Dream is a very much also a sports guy. So at that time, he knows that we're big, Bulls fans. We love Michael. So he understood the triangle, the thought of it.
Triangle sound, triangle offense, red zone. The red zone, it's sports.
Everything for us is a sports analogy. So what red zone is, most teams get inside the 20 and can't score. If you look at statistically, that's the hardest place to score. So your team has to be more locked down in that red zone more than any place on the field. Watch how many teams, when you watch a game, can get inside the 20 but can't get over. They'll be on the 1 yard line, can't get over. This is a huge thing.
Yeah.
So Dream understood when giving these analogies and really took to it. The industry was in its way that the industry will be, doesn't look for talent, they look for results.
Yeah.
And so, going through that process of trying to develop him, we're all going through our process in this business. We all have hills and valleys. And at that time, there was a little bit of valley-ish going on for us in the sense that they felt, oh, we know what y'all do. They think they got y'all figured out. And it's new cats. It's always some new cats that we're against. So we're going against the new guys. And, there was, I think Pharrell was hot at that time. So, it was all about Pharrell and Tim and all those guys. And we get it, historically what they did as well. And one day I moved back to LA and Dream was here just coming by the studio. And I was kind of his, guy here. So he came by, he hears this track that my cousin Kook and Trick had done. Which was now Umbrella, and he just walks in and goes, Umbrella, and he kills the record, and then we go on another run.
Man,
he took science.
I remember that debut. I was out here.
It's a whole nother run.
When they were running that on the radio first time, hot off the presses, running it back.
And the moment, I call these God moments because you got to be at the right place at the right time, and a lot of times, and we'll talk about from the perspective of the journey being in the beginning where so many people are, it hurts.
Yeah.
The process is painful. I heard Will Smith say that you got to be careful about your dreams because your dreams can kill you.
Yep.
You got to be really, this is something that I've seen you go through.
Yes. Yes.
Look at yourself in the
sleeping
mirror.
On couches and sleeping on floors and losing people around you and just you get so locked into a certain point in your career in such a studio that you don't even all the comforts of the real world disappear. Like going home and going to bed, going
Taking
home to
shower.
lay down, watch TV.
Yeah.
It becomes nothing but your comfort is in this studio.
Absolutely.
Man. And then everybody thinks you're absolutely insane.
Definitely.
Yep.
And you're on your own, and you're the only one that believes.
Right.
I went through that in Chicago. As much as I gave a lot of highlights, there were a lot of lowlights. But what those moments are done to, I believe, weed out the people who are not going to be in the 1%.
Yeah.
And so when you start talking about Dream walking into the building next door and hearing that track and writing that, and then at that time, now we're different. We're a different company. We're a different mindset. We understand the numbers. We've done enough deals to now know how to really compensate on having a hit. You can have a hit and not get we call leaving meat on the bone. And then you can carve all the meat off the bone. And that's now my brother Mark is not the same guy he was, in 91, but now as a manager, able to come in and go, I know what we got. We know we got a hit, and this is how we're going to ultimately compensate on it. I'm going to need you to do this. I'm going to need you to do that. And what leverage means, and I try to tell these kids a lot of time, you can't come in and ask everybody, such and such, on the internet it says such and such got $1 million. I said, you don't understand the math of how they got to that number.
Yeah.
He just didn't ask. I mean, maybe they did, but there's a mathematical equation that gets you to that number,
right,
to where you can ask for that type of money, because either they're only gonna go so far above their risk, unless you already got that money coming in, which that they have to have. So
analytics, numbers.
It gets down to the
Formulas.
numbers. So if you don't know these numbers in the game, you're at a disadvantage. You have to understand, and this is why what Jason was saying, what he was saying about your attorney can get it for you, and it will be contractual, but there's things that can determine whether you make an extra $500,000 on a hit or you lose $500,000 on a hit. And the wording and how they say it and all of these things become definitions of a phase in a contract or a page in a contract. I want that defined. We're going to define what you're saying so that when we go to court, because see, here's the thing. As much as I love Jason, and Jason might be a litigator, but most times when you have to sue, your attorney is not going to be the guy to do the litigation.
Right.
So you got to go to a guy that litigates everything. Everybody in that courtroom, whether you're being sued or you're suing someone, is only going to go what's written on that paper.
Right.
So if you don't have a definition of saying define what this means on page 18, and the judge can look at it and go, oh, well, it's defined here. You breached based off the definition.
Yeah.
Then it's left up to interpretation of the court.
Right.
And the court's probably going to lean in towards not against you. So these things can contractually ultimately end up being really, really huge moments of whether you make $70-80 million off of a run or you get, 20.
Right.
And I know a lot of people who had, maybe I could say, more hits than Dream and Trick at a point when you look at their overall body, but didn't get as much money.
Right.
And we were able to extract a lot more money out of it based off of the mistakes that had come, the decades
The learning
before.
lessons.
The learning lessons.
So the times so in reality, because I like to do this on the podcast, he knows, I like to connect the dots with the hidden hands. So in reality, the time period where you guys were learning and Mark was learning how to handle you guys' phone calls and talking to the lawyers, and like you said, you didn't get back-ends for certain stuff, was kind of a hidden hand to your career for the parts where you got to that run, and now we can capitalize because we've put in the work and learned this and that behind the scenes so that we know.
Absolutely, because the game will lure you into, I got a business manager, and when I bought that car, I didn't have to go to the lot and get it. They delivered it. So they bringing the truck out and they backing it off. And I got a lawyer who handles all. You can get into that, but it's still your business. And this is why a lot of people wake up one day and they go, when it slows down and you ain't hot no more, and they go, well, where's my money? And then they go, well, you was doing this, you did this, and it's all accounted for.
Yeah.
Well, in some cases it ain't.
Sometimes it ain't.
A lot of cases it's not accounted for.
Yeah.
And you got to go and get money and find out this person misappropriated funds and did this type of things. But the game can lure you into a state of where you're not watching the pennies. And I think at that time what it did for us was, I think we were really blessed to be here for another run to be able to exercise what we knew, what we now know from the business perspective of the music business. So now that we've been able to match, we can identify and make hits, and now we can identify and handle this paper. Now we're gonna put those together, and that's what's really what this has become. You can't beat us.
You can't beat us with that.
You can't beat us.
You can, and so you guys are there. You have the run, and it's great and all. But something you said, hits.
Yes.
I wanna dive a little bit into that because you guys, to me, are not in the music business. You guys are in the hit business.
Yes.
Because there's a lot of people in the music business,
yes, especially in this time.
Right.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I'm gonna start at the basics, and then we can move further. And we're not gonna go too much into your science, but I just want to know, what is a hit? Because a lot of there are people today, they might have a song that does a couple numbers online. They're like, this is my first hit.
Right.
So is there a way to define? Is there a clear definition of a hit to you, or what is a hit in your eyes?
I've had conversation with people. I have to go with what I was taught what a hit was. A hit is what the masses tell you is a hit. Now, you can have a small group of people. People's musical tastes are varied. I mean,
Yeah.
you can't
Especially
say,
nowadays.
Subjective.
Especially nowadays. You can have, there's bands and there's artists that people be like, you ever heard of them? I'll be like, man, I ain't heard of them, but they got a nice following and they're making money. They're doing their thing,
touring, all that.
yeah, touring, all that, and the moment of it has to be in my zone or in my space or somebody else's in the main public space is a misnomer in this business now. But a hit is still a hit. I believe a hit, what I would define a hit, is when it emotionally touches. There's something about the record that emotionally touches the masses. I can't explain to you why. When now we're looking at maybe 300 program directors in this country that don't talk to each other, all decide they're going to play a record.
Right.
And the reason why is because what is spent to get a record, you can spend that money to get a record, but it won't let it stay in the market.
Right.
The people have to. It'll get you daytime and hey, whatever that is that they got to do to get the record spent. I can't really say.
Yeah.
But,
right.
Whatever they got to do to get it up there.
Yeah.
But it has to have the legs to stand on its own.
Because you could basically take it there, give the incentive or quote unquote incentive,
Right.
And you on a time limit then.
You on a time limit
because if it ain't picking up or nobody's listening to it,
you either got to come back with another bag,
saying they don't want
with
it.
some more incentive,
Right. Right.
or you got to let it die.
Right.
So that's why you see some records go boom, bam,
Fall
they'll go
flat.
right down because
Right.
the public is like, I don't care how
don't
much
get it.
we love it. The reality of it is that they tell us what it is.
It's not connecting.
Right. So it means that there's some constants that I was taught that people pick up on the human condition, who we are as humans, of what we pick up on, and there's certain rules that we apply to that cannot be changed, that will never change, that will make a hit. You can have a great produced record, it can be a good song, but there's never gonna ever be a moment to where Single Ladies is not gonna I can do that. You know exactly what I'm talking about.
Right.
That's a hit.
Right.
That's what I can go, You know exactly what I'm talking about.
Right.
I'm not just using my records. I know the guys, no disrespect to but all of our friends and colleagues who understand the science, they get it too. I remember the one thing that Jimmy and Terry taught me was it's not an accident.
Yeah.
It's a science. And so once you apply to the rules, now creatively as humans, as producers and creative people, that's a hard thing to discipline yourself to say, I'm going to stay within these rules every time I make a record.
Right.
Because there's the part of us that want to express ourselves in art.
Right.
So you have to really know how to separate those things. It's a psychological game.
And it's the whole, but I meant for it to sound like that, or I meant to do,
and you know
do
what
that at that
I was
part.
like, you're gonna explain that? How you gonna explain that to 100 million people? You gonna get out and tell everybody that's what you meant to do? They gotta get the meaning. They gotta get
understand it.
The intention of what you're trying to do.
Absolutely.
So, those rules that I won't get into, but they are things that why you keep seeing the same producers a lot of times are running the charts.
Do you feel like the science is lost in today's musical production world, like in the
As far as what the producers are concerned, I think yes. But the guys who either figure it out, like there's two things that happens. Either you accidentally fall on it, and then that's the good news. The bad news, if you accidentally fell on it, is that's when the calls start coming in, and you got to do it again, and you don't know.
Right. Right.
You don't know how you got to that record.
Yeah.
Y'all was high in the studio. Everybody's drinking. Everybody like, hey, that's hot. That's hot. And it goes out and does blah. And then there's got to be somebody in the room that goes, hey, what we did that day. And sometimes it gets down to like some real, like, I put my shoes on, my right shoe on that day. What else?
call these people back?
Right.
Who is that? Call that person there. Who was sitting on the couch while
I didn't talk to nobody that day.
Right,
Something.
Yep.
Right.
You start trying to repeat these things as you come to the studio to get aligned with why is my process today any different when I wrote that song than it is today. So
it's like Jordan's shorts that he wore, the North Carolina shorts he
Yeah.
wore under his uniform.
your routine actually becomes to your advantage. People don't understand that it's not, I had to explain to my mom the other day because she didn't even get it. I was like, Mom, you don't understand. Before I get to the studio, I'm prepping before I get there. So I'm available for whatever happens. Now, some days don't nothing happen. Don't nothing come. Some days we all know that there's those days where you be like, man, and it's, you have to learn how to psychologically manage it. Some of those days you're like, oh, is it over? Did I miss it?
Yeah.
And then some days, now I'm like, yeah, we'll just wait on it. Today ain't the day. But these things are all why we are capable of kind of keep coming back into the marketplace. And it's a discipline. So that's the answer I can give you. It's a record that touches the emotion. I mean, think about it. I used to be amazed by Michael Jackson.
Yeah.
Michael do a record, and he'll go to Budapest and do a concert. Nobody speaks English.
They know that
But
record.
they all know his record.
They all know that record.
Why is that? It's an emotion.
That's like that last record. That I don't know none of the words, but
That
you know
chant.
what I mean? It
That
crosses
chant.
over from an Afrobeat situation to that. A lot of times now with the younger guys, right? We run into situations where it'll be split. You'll have what you're saying, which is the science of hits, or you know what I mean? Or to me, it sounds like you just actually are a professional. Right? No, it just sounds like a professional. Like a professional's gonna practice, a professional's gonna have.
Yeah.
They're not just throwing stuff at a wall.
Yeah.
But a lot of times today with the younger cats, they have kind of a throw it at the wall. I
play
don't
the
want to
numbers.
overthink it mentality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it'll cut them down to where they say, hey, we'll just do, like you said, play the numbers. So I'm gonna play the numbers they do. Oh, we'll do 100 songs and we'll go back and pick it and we'll make an amazing album. And then there's some people who, hey, I'm coming in. I know I'm gonna do 20 songs, so we're looking for 20 of the best songs. We're writing records and
Sharpshooters.
How do you feel about the young guys coming up and they kind of have this way of like not really putting science into it? They kind of like look at everything as if it's like we're just getting happy accidents all day. We're just getting, you know what I mean?
That's a great term. Happy accidents.
Yeah, we just get in the studio and just, hey, we try it again and y'all like it. You know what I mean? And then you say, hey, there's a science to hits, and then they say, well, that's what would work for you. There's no science to
That's
hits.
exactly the energy that we get.
Yeah.
You know?
That's exactly. I mean, there's a great divide. I can't sit here and lie. I mean, I've been in rooms where I've had managers go, "Can you come talk to my producers?" And I go in there and I'll be spitting some game to them, and the dudes won't even be listening. Like I've had guys just be like doing other on their phone, not listening because. And my takeaway is, and this is no disrespect to the young guys because I notice there's this battle and then it goes on, but it really gets down to I think that they're lazy. I think we're dealing with I need the result. Nobody wants to go through, even though you're gonna go through it.
Yeah.
You're going through it, but instead of learning the steps along the way and being a fly on the wall to this situation and that situation, everybody is somewhat they think an expert based off of what they've seen on YouTube or the internet.
Right.
And then the result of it is I got to show you what it is on Instagram.
Yep.
So
I
at
agree.
my feed on Instagram, I'll be laughing because I see people put up on their reels or in their stories. We got one.
You got it smashed.
We got to smash. And I'll be
That's
like,
the
no,
worst
you
thing you
don't.
could ever
No,
say.
you don't.
Right.
You don't.
Worst
I'll
thing
be
you
like,
could
no,
say.
you don't.
You're telling yourself that.
You're telling yourself that.
But ain't nobody told you
Ain't
that about
nobody
that song.
told you it's a smash.
Yeah.
But
ain't
you-
nobody asked you to hear that song again.
No.
Ain't none of your friends in the studio ever said, hey, bro, send me that. I want to hear that when I'm driving home. Like,
so
there's certain
it's-
clues you can get if you know something is
Bruh.
good.
And
It's
I'm
just
not,
simple.
and what that does is,
Outside of just the meticulous science he's saying.
absolutely. And what is disingenuous to is the people who really do have that moment, they generally don't post it. They generally don't say, I got to smash.
Yeah.
Because you don't want nobody to steal it.
Yeah.
That's really the biggest thing.
Because now you have a whole nother part of like what
It's
you just
out
talked
there.
about. In the whole podcast is how to reap the rewards of your smash.
Right. So you done gave it up so early.
Yeah.
And then now you can get in the comments and go, oh, that shit ain't shit.
Right.
You know, the people is
Right.
telling you.
Yeah,
You're
yeah, yeah.
immediately seeing
Right.
this sort of kind of, and it may be a smash, and it may be a bunch of haters in your,
Right.
in your, in your comment section.
Yeah.
So it's a disingenuous sort of moment that you're sharing outside the studio.
Yeah.
So when we get one, like even in our cases, like we feel like we can identify a track, and I'll be like, yo, this is crazy. I don't say nothing.
Yeah.
Like Trick will be like, send me that. I'll be like, I ain't sending it to you yet, nigga.
Because I know what
Because
you're
I
about
know,
to do.
because I know he gonna where he's listening.
Yeah.
And it's vice versa. He'll throw me something and be like, "What you feel about that?" But I know that he's taking it through the things.
Yeah.
And it's one of those situations that once it's done, then we go, oh yeah, I was right about this record. I knew that this track was something special. We call it identifying. You can identify it and then hope to God. You know, I saw Dr. Dre speak on this, that you give it to somebody who writes a hit on it.
Right.
That's the next
It's so
thing.
many things that have to fall into
It's
place.
so many things that have to fall into place.
Yeah.
So now my role with my top line writers is I coach them up. That ain't it. I don't like that verse. Give me that hook. You don't have a hook. You know, so many of these writers, I have to go, where's the hook?
Right. Right.
Because I'm like, are you making art or are you trying to make a hit? What's your intention with the record? Who is it for? So many times I would speak to writers and go, well, who was you thinking about? Oh, nobody. Well,
You was thinking about yourself. You
Right.
was making it for yourself.
you're making it for, once again,
100% of zero is zero.
it's zero.
So you're gonna sit there with that whole 100% of nothing.
And you're going to play it. I
That
go,
satisfies yourself.
you have a hobby. Now you have a hobby.
You have a
Yeah.
hobby. Yeah.
Me and you are not in the same business.
Right.
Yeah.
Because
right.
I have to feed my family. We have overhead. We have an infrastructure. All of these things that have to be taken care of out of the science. And if we don't get it done there, and I get people all the time, big dog, we need to get up and I'll be like, bro, I don't know when I've ever given anyone the indication that I don't write. I just write with random people,
Right.
or that Trick writes with random people, or Dream, or any of our writers. You got to have something special.
Absolutely.
To get in this. So, you know, sometimes we have people be in the building. They won't even say, you know, I got this writer right now that's hot. She about to be next. Named Mocha. Corey, Believe in Mocha. They real tight. They writing with me and Trick and doing a lot of stuff that we're doing. But Mocha was sitting in this building and never opened her mouth. She's an actress. She be on Netflix shows and all this kind of stuff. We met her through MK. She happened to be sitting here, and we needed a lyrical idea for something, and she just bap. And I was like, but it was what she said.
Yeah.
I went, And I remember I said, Trick, I think that girl Mocha, she kind of tight.
Yeah.
So then me and her and Corey wrote a record together that just went bam. So I was like, okay, that's one. We did another. So then we did Iggy Azalea's new project that's coming out, which is about to bring her all the way back. We killed her. And Mocha was one of the keys in that. And her pen is ridiculous. And then I got the people that's all over you. Big dog, I need to get the record. And then you put them in and you go, okay, well, half the battle is you got in the building. You got in here, so let me see what you got.
Yeah.
And it's nothing.
Right.
And then they mad at you. They out in the streets. You know, you're like, okay, cool. But this is the reality. Everybody thinks that when they get into this, that they ready. It is a maturation period of, I always say to this, to bring a spiritual aspect to this, is that God don't give it to you till you ready. And
Right.
all the failures, all the things that's not working is because you're not ready.
Yeah.
You got to sharpen the blade, and then the opportunities will come to put you in a position to where you'll shine. I've seen it with Esther Dean.
Yeah.
Esther sat with us for 5 or 6 years before she got on.
She's incredible.
And
incredible.
look at all the hits and look at what's happened now in history.
Yeah.
You know,
The alumni from here is crazy, yo.
Yeah.
Including me.
right,
But just,
right,
but just,
exactly.
They're going like Esther Dean,
Yeah.
Dream. Like we could go through so many, man. We could Shakespeare,
Yeah.
Los. Like we could keep
And that's not
going
even
through.
including the artists, you know, Frank
Right.
Ocean.
Frank
Right.
Ocean,
You know,
back
Yeah.
he was Lonnie Bro at
Lonnie
one point.
Bro was
When he was
walking
here,
around,
he was
right.
Lonnie Bro.
He was right, and now he's, you know, when he became Frank. But I remember him as a baby, and so they're here, and so when you get here, and I tell people, if you walk out of here and you don't get something, it's on you.
Right.
You played.
Absolutely.
You played
You
yourself.
played,
Yeah.
you played the
Yeah.
whole. You
Yeah.
played around while you were here. You did something where you didn't get.
You weren't paying attention.